Tov. We are starting the daf Yomi for Rosh Chodesh Elul. Kiddushin daf Hey, and this daf Yomi has a lot to do with Rosh Chodesh Elul. We'll see in a moment. The Gemara on the top of Hey Amid Aleph asks the question, Minayin, from where do we know Sha'af Bishtar? We have seen that a man can betroth a woman with kasef, with money, with bia, with relations. And now the Gemara asks the question, how do we know he could also betroth her with a contract? The Gemara says, well, by giving her a piece of paper, or giving her a contract and saying, you betrothed to me, we learn that out from a kal v'chomer b'dinu. It's logical. Uma kasef she'in motzi machnes, just like money, which is not able to divorce a woman, is able to marry a woman. Shtar, a contract, shemotzi, which a bill of divorce divorces a woman. Eino din shemachnes, for sure. We should be able to use it to betroth a woman. Gemara says that's not a good kal v'chomer because you can't learn out a contract for money because money has a unique feature. Money can be used to redeem hektish, sacred objects, and also meiser sheni. And so therefore, since money can be used to redeem hektish and meiser sheni, therefore, for this reason, you can't learn out a kal v'chomer, an argument from a money to prove what we could do with a contract. Because it says about money, they'll say, v'nosana kesef v'kamlo, that it says about the money that he gave the money. If he wants to redeem the field, then he gives the money, and then he has redeemed it. So therefore, we can't learn out a kal v'chomer from kasef to shtar, from money to a contract. So what's the source that we can betroth a woman with a contract? So the Gemara says let's base it upon a pasuk by gitin, by a divorce, a marriage. Amar Kra, it says that after a man divorces a woman, v'yatza v'haisa, she goes out, which is a word associated with divorce, v'haisa, and she will be. That's a word associated with marriage. But we see from here, says the Gemara, Makish, we compare the betrothal to the divorce. And so therefore we could say, just like the divorce is with a contract, also the marriage must be with a contract. So the Gemara says, well, if that's the case, so therefore that's our source for the idea that you can marry a woman with using a contract. If that's the case, well, let's push that argument. Let's also compare divorce to marriage. In that sense, just like marriage, which can be done with money, a betrothal can be done with money. So too, you should be able to divorce with money. So Abaye says, no, we're not going to say that. Why? Yomru kesef, machnes, kesef, motzi. You want to say that money can marry and then money can also divorce. Sanegor yasekategor. You're going to turn the defense attorney into the prosecutor. We don't want the defense attorney, i.e., money, which is used for marriage, to become the prosecutor, which is used for divorce. Mara says, well, Yachi Shtar Nami. Well, the contract, we have the same question. Yomru Shtar Motzi Shtar Machnis Kategor Yasa Sanegor. Yes, Deborah, you had a question. Raising your hand. Yeah, if you just unmute if you have a question. So the Gemara says, well, if that's the case, you're turning we have the same problem by the prosecutor and the defense attorney, because we're saying that the divorce, which is done through a contract, is the prosecutor. Kategor is then becoming marriage. You can marriage through a divorce, and the prosecutor is becoming a defense attorney. So the Gemara says, no, they're two different things. The contract used for divorce is completely different than the contract used for marriage. One is a get and one is betrothal. They say two totally separate things. So the prosecutor is not becoming a defense attorney. Where it says, well, in this case, it's the same thing. Each one has money. It's the same. There are two different monies. One money is being used for marriage. One money is being used for divorce. So Gemara says, "Tiva miya chadu." Shkoya. Good morning, Rebbe Eric. So he says, no. It's nevertheless it's the same currency. It's the same coin. It's the concept of a coin. We just pause and say we see this phrase. Kateg or yasas and Can we turn the prosecutor into the defense attorney? This phrase is completely related to what we're for in Yana Diyoma, for what we're doing today. Today is Rosh Chodesh. It's the first day we blow the shofar, and the Gemara Rosh Hashanah tells us that on Rosh Hashanah we blow a ram's horn and not a cow's horn. Why don't we blow a cow's horn? Because the golden calf was done with the cow, and so therefore we don't want to blow the horn of the cow, because that will remind us of the golden calf. And so therefore we have this concept, ein kategor yasas negar. We don't turn the prosecutor into the defense attorney. Therefore we blow with the ram's horn. And here in our daf, this is, I think, the only other time outside of the context of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur that we have this phrase of ein kategor yasas negar. It's with this concept of Gittin right here on Kiddushin Hayam and Aleph. So it's directly related to the topic of the day. So we're on Hayam and Aleph around 15 lines to the top. We're trying to find the source that we can betroth with a contract. And the first source that the Gemara cited is from the fact that the pasuk says, just like you can be divorced with a contract, you can be married with a contract. So the Gemara says, Rava gives a different answer. Rava says we're going to base it upon a pasuk, a different verse. Rava Amar Krav, the Kasavla, it says that he writes for her a bill of divorce, which tells us, B'ksiva migareshes ve'ena miskareshes b'kesef. The Gemara said, well, if we compare marriage to divorce, then which is the source for it, well, then why aren't we also allowed to divorce with money? So Rava says, no, there's a specific verse that tells us that we can divorce only with writing, and so therefore we can't divorce with money. Because of what? It says he writes for a bill of divorce, which means B'ksiva megareshes, he divorces her with writing, ve'ena miskareshes, ve'ena miskareshes b'kesef. He doesn't divorce her with money. So the Gemara says, ve'ema, maybe what it means is B'ksiva miskareshes, maybe it means he divorces her with writing, ve'ena miskadeshes b'ksiva. Maybe it's coming to exclude the other idea. Maybe he can't betroth her with writing. The Gemara says, no, we know he can betroth her with writing. No, because there's the other verse which says she goes out and she gets married, which means we're makish, that we compare them, that the same way she get divorced, she can get married. The Gemara says umara isas, but why it seems to be like it's not a clear thing that you have to choose to interpret the verses this way. Why do you say that one verse by divorce teaches us you can get married through writing? The other divorce tells us you can only get divorced through writing. Why don't we just say it's the opposite, that you can only get married through money and not through divorce? The Gemara says no. Mistabra, it's logical to assume that the verse that's referring to specifically to divorce, the Kasava Sefer Krisus, which we interpret to mean you can only get divorced through writing, that's Kai B'Gerushin. That's referring to divorce. So therefore, Memai Gerushin, it's telling us you can only get divorced through writing. Kai B'Gerushin Umemai Kiddushin. So the one that's referring to divorce, why would we say it's coming to exclude Kiddushin? So therefore, the Gemara says the Yotzav Ha'isa teaches us she can get married through writing, and because of our Sefer Krisos teaches us she can only get divorced through writing. So the Gemara says, "Oh, Rabbi Yossi Aguli, da apekle lahai krawa drashachmina." But so we want to say that what's the source, according to Rava, that she can't get married? She can't get divorced from money. It's based upon because of us Sefer Krisos. But if Gemara Gittin in the second chapter in Daf Yudas through Chaf Aleph, Rabbi Yossi Aguli, they use this verse to teach us that it means that you can only write a get on. You can't write a get on an animal or on a living vegetable. So if that's the case, according to Rabbi Yossi Aguli, the apik lehai kro Josh Achrina, Rabbi Yossi clearly uses that verse to teach us something else. Well, if that's the case, how does Rabbi Yossi really know that you can't be divorced through writing? Gemara says, well, his source is Amakra Sefer Krisus, which means it says a bill of divorce. That means you can only get divorced through a bill, through a scroll. Sefer course of Ein Davar Achar course, but you can't get divorced through anything else. The Gemara says, well, V'Rabbanan, well, what do the rabbis do with this phrase? Hi, Krisus, my other way. Well, the rabbis, we say you can get, we learn out from the rabbis learn out from the pasuk of the costs of well, what do they do with Sefer Krisus? So the Rabbanan say, this reminds us of Gittin, or review of Gittin, and it's to teach us that the bill of divorce needs to be something that there's no strings attached. That it's not that there's no strings attached. That it's a relationship that will be terminated. That anticipates the complete termination of that relationship. Like we learned at the end of Tractate Gittin, if a man would say, if a man says, I'm divorcing you on the condition that you cannot drink wine forever, you can never go to your father's home, since this is an unending relationship, then we're going to say that's not a valid bill of divorce. But if he would say, Amanas Kol Shloshim Yom, he could stay on the condition that you can't drink wine for 30 days, well, since there's a termination point, then we're going to say that's a valid divorce. So the rabbis learn out from the word, because of us say for Krisus, and it means that you can't have this open-ended conditional clause associated with the get. Rabbi Yossi clearly learns that concept out, that last concept, Mikares Krisus, not the way. It could have said, say for Kares, but it says Krisus, so he learns it out. Rabbanan, Kares Krisus, the rabbis don't believe that you should expound the difference between the words Kares and Krisus, so that's a distinction between them. So now the Gemara said we learn out that we need kesef shtar or bia, that you can betroth a woman through money, contract, or bia, and you could do this. And all this is based upon a verse. So the Gemara says, why do we need 3 verses? Okay, we know you can't learn out each one from the other. You can't learn out money from contract or bia, and contract you can't learn out from money, or bia you can't learn out from money and contract. Fine. But we should be able to learn out one of the 2 from the other 2. So the Gemara says, hi, Tasi, which one can you learn out from the other 2? So the Gemara says, well, Torah doesn't need to give us a verse about shtar, which we said. And you can learn it out from the fact that you could be betrothed with kesef and bia. And what will be the argument? So the Gemara says, no, you can't learn out shtar from money and bia. Why? Because contract is fundamentally different, because money and bia, there's personal benefit to the person to the people involved. So therefore you can't learn out one from the other. So the Gemara, Chef John Haidt has arrived to make the shakshuka for the Chodesh Elul breakfast. So the Gemara says, well, maybe the Torah shouldn't tell us about bia. Maybe the Torah shouldn't tell us the concept of the verse of bia, which we said was be'olah, and the teisimianach, we learn out bia from kesef and shtar. Gemara says, no, you can't learn out bia from kesef and shtar, because kesef and shtar is a difference. Because money and contract can be used in many ways to effectuate changes of status, but bia cannot. Bia is just here by marriage. The Gemara says, well, the Gemara then says, well, maybe the Torah doesn't need to give us a verse about money. We had 2 possible verses that tell us that money can effectuate a contract. Or we said yesterday. And then we can learn out from kesef and from bia and shtar. Gemara says, no, there's a fundamental difference between bia and shtar and kesef. Why? Bia can work against her will. If she falls to yibum with her brother-in-law, then it can even be done against her will with bia. And also, shtar can be done against her will with a divorce. But kesef can never be done against a woman's will. But what we do have a case of kesef against her will, how so? By the case of the Hebrew maid slave who was sold for money, the Gemara says, yeah, it's fundamentally different. But that's not a case of marriage. So we don't find that a case of marriage, if it's not marriage, it's a slave woman. So therefore, in a case of marriage, we don't find money being used against her will. So the Gemara says, Amar Avhuna, chuppah kona mikal v'chomer. So even though the Mishnah says you can be betrothed a woman through kesef shtar or bia, Avhuna says you can also betroth the woman with chuppah, i.e. by bringing under your canopy, bringing her into your domicile. And that could be a way of betrothing her, and that we learn out from a kal v'chomer, from a logical argument. Just like money, which if a man betroths a woman, she cannot eat from the truma, but Konet does work to effectuate the betrothal, chuppah, shema'achelas b'truma chuppah, which does allow a woman to eat the truma. Once he brings her into his domicile, he does the full marriage, that's called nisuin, and she can eat the truma. Eino din should take that. Well, then for sure she should be able to eat the truma. Then for sure she should be able to be betrothed with chuppah. The Gemara says, no. The kesef eino machal. You think money doesn't work to allow her to eat the truma just because they're just betrothed? She can't eat the truma. Really, she could. We already had this thing, subos, that biblically speaking, if a woman is just betrothed, she can eat the truma of her husband as a Kohen. As it says, the Kohen kiyikna nefesh kinyan kaspo, when the Kohen will basically have somebody who's a full member of his household. By kinyan kaspo, this woman is a kinyan kaspo. She's fully part of his household. What's the reason why we say that this woman who's a betrothed cannot eat from the truma? Only because gezerah, it's just a rabbinic decree. Shema yimzugu ha'kos b'beis. The husband is going to give his betrothed wife a nice, beautiful bottle of truma wine. She's going to go home, and then she's going to be drinking at the Shabbos table, and her brother, who's Yisrael, is going to say, "Oh, let me try that wine," and he's not going to realize it's truma. She's going to give it to her brothers and sisters. So the rabbis made a decree she can't drink the truma wine while she's betrothed. Ella, so the Gemara says, so therefore, what's the so therefore the Gemara says that we're going to say, how are we going to learn out chuppah from kasef? We learn it like this. How do we learn how they can make a Kiddushin with a chuppah? From money. Just like money, which cannot effectuate nisuin. Part 2 of the marriage cannot be done with money. It can only be done part 1, and yet it does betrothal on top of hayam base. Chuppah, which does indeed complete the marriage. Din should take that for sure. Can do part 1. So the Gemara says, well, no, you can't learn out from chuppah from kesef, because malak kesef shecame podim bo'ekdeshus nicer sheni. No, kesef has something unique to it. That kesef can redeem sacred objects and meiser sheni. That's a value, that's a power that kesef has that Kiddushin doesn't have, that chuppah doesn't have. So Gemara says, okay, let's learn out chuppah from bia. We'll learn out chuppah from relations. Mala bia shekin kona. So from the fact that you can do bia with Kiddushin, so therefore you should be able to do chuppah with Kiddushin. So the Gemara says, mean to say, that bia cannot redeem hekdesh and meiser sheni, and nevertheless it serves as a betrothal. So the Gemara says, no, you can't learn anything out from bia. Mala bia shekin kona bia vama, because bia has a special power that it can effectuate a marriage by yibum in the case of brother-in-law, which is only unique to bia, and you can't do that with chuppah or kasef. So the Gemara says, well, kasef yochel. So let's go back and try and prove for money again. So neither one on its own can prove it, not bia nor kasef. But what's that tzad shavash? And what's the common denominator between bia and kasef? Shekonim ba'alma v'konim kan, that they have an ability to be able to effectuate acquisitions in other areas, and also by hekdesh. So also I'll bring chuppah shekonim ba'alma, that in general it can work as a completion of the marriage, the kohen kan, and so therefore it should work here also by betrothal. The Gemara says no, malatzada shavaban shekina nasa meruba. No, bia and kesef, the woman is getting benefit from it. So, and the man is getting benefit. So there's a difference between that and chuppah. There's no hana. There's no specific benefit from that. So the Gemara says, well, shtar yochiach. Okay, let's try to prove chuppah from a contract. Gemara says, no, you can't prove chuppah from a contract. No, a contract can effectuate a divorce. A chuppah can't. So you can't learn out chuppah from a contract. The Gemara says kesef will be a yochich. So let's learn out from kesef and bia. Because we're doing rizek rizeh. What's a tzad shavash ben shekonim ba'alma v'konim kan. All three of these things can effectuate status changes in other areas and also here. Gemara says, no, we can't learn out chuppah from these three. Why? All three of these things can be done against the will. Kasef, you can shtar, you can divorce against the will. Bia could be a yavam against the will, and kasef, a woman can be sold as a slave against the will. So the Gemara says, "Rav Huna kasef mia beisha lo ashkan." It says Rav Huna, who says that you can learn out from these threes, because he says that there isn't this uniqueness, because that by marriage you can't use kesef against her will, like we also saw in Amar Aleph. So Amar Rava shtei tshuvos b'davar. Rava says, I'll give you two arguments against Rav Huna. Rav Huna says that chuppah is a valid way of making a betrothal. He says, first of all, I'll tell you two ways to knock you down. First of all, chada, the shalosh tanan v'dalad lo tanan. It says in our Mishnah you can betroth in three ways, not four. Chuppah would be way number four. There's kesef shtar bia, and then there's chuppah. That would be four, not three. Both klum chuppah gomeres al yedei Kiddushin. And the only way a chuppah is able to complete the marriage is if their first was a betrothal. So you want to learn out the case of chuppah that was not done with a betrothal first from a chuppah that was done with a betrothal. So how can you make the argument, well, if chuppah can complete a marriage, for sure it can make a betrothal? Well, these are two totally separate things. One is a chuppah that's after betrothal, that works. But chuppah before betrothal, we have no idea that it works. So Abaye says, let me reject what Rava is saying. Abaye, Gimel Tanan, Vidalad Lo Tanan. Now, what you say, our mission says only three things and not four things. That's not a question. Why? Milsa the Ksiva Behaja Katana, Milsa the Lo Ksiva Behaja Katana. Our mission is dealing with those methods that are explicit in the verse. And these three things, Kesef, Shtar, and Bia, we have them written about in the verse. So therefore, it mentions them, but not chuppah. With the Kamras, Kum Chuppah Gomeres Al Yidei Kiddushin. If you say, well, no, the only way chuppah completes it is through Kiddushin first, through a betrothal first. Well, Rav Huna Nami Achakamer. That's exactly Rav Huna's argument. He says, just like money, which can't complete a marriage, even though it can start the marriage. Yet it does a betrothal. Chuppah, which does complete a marriage, for sure it can effectuate the betrothal. On Ketza Bekesef, so the Brisa says, how does he betroth her with money? Nasal Kesef or Shava Kesef, he gives her money or the equivalent of money. He says to her, Hareya Mikudeshli, you are betrothed to me. Hareya Muresetli, you are betrothed to me. Hareya into, you are to me as my wife. Harezu Mikudeshes. All those methods work as a betrothal. Avohisha Nasna, but if she gives him money, Va'amra he, and she says to him, Hareini Mikudeshes Lacha, Hareini Mureses Lacha, Hareini Lacha into, you are betrothed to me, you are my wife, you are my husband, I am to you as a wife, I am betrothed to you, that's, just to be more precise, and those don't work. So this is the Brisa. So Maske for Rav Papa says, well, the first clause of the Brisa said, he gives her money, and he says, you are betrothed to me. The second, and that's good. The second clause of the Brisa says, she gives him money, and she says, you are betrothed to me. She's the one who says. So Rav Papa says, so go back to the first clause. What's the reason why it's good? The reason why it's good is because he gave it and he said it. So if he would give it and she would say it would be no good, that's the implication. But from the concluding clause, if she gives him the money, the amrahi, and she says the money to him, and she says it's traced him, lo have a Kiddushin. It's not a Kiddushin. Why? Because she gave it and she said it. Which would imply that it would imply that if he gave it and she said it, it would be a Kiddushin. So we have the two parts contradicting each other. In the first clause, it implies that if he gives it and she says it, it's no good. It has to be him giving it and him saying it. Whereas the second clause it says if she gives it and she says it, it's no good, implying that if she gives it and he says it, or he gives it and she says it, it is good. So the first clause is contradicting the second clause. So the Gemara says, Reisha Davka Sefer Kedei Nas. Okay, the first clause is precise. It has to be specifically him giving it and him saying the phrase. And the second clause is Kedei Nas, but the price is being inexact. It's just speaking. Gemara says, no, that can't work. Tani Sefer Milsa the Sasha Reisha. You think the second clause would say something which contradicts the first clause? That doesn't work. You're not going to have direct contradiction. So this is what it means. Nasan he va'amra. Nasan hu va'amrahu. Let's say he gives it and he says it. Pshita da Kiddushin. If he gives it and he says you are betrothed to me, it's obvious that that's a Kiddushin. Nasan hu va'amrahi. Let's say he gives it and she says it. Well, that's no good. Why? That's like she gave it and she said it's no good. We'll have a Kiddushin. Alternatively, if he gives it and he says it in the Kudesh, it's a betrothal. If she gives it and she says it, ain't a betrothal, ain't a Kudesh, not a betrothal. Nasan, who, let's say he gives it, the Amrahi, let's say he gives it and she says it, Sveikahi. If he gives it and she says the phrase, then we're not sure. And then if somebody else came along and betrothed her, we're going to be concerned rabbinically and require her to get two gitin. So from both of them, Amar Shmuel beKiddushin nasan la kesef v'shavik kesef. V'Amar lo harei mekudeshes harei mereses harei at into harei mekudeshes harei nishech harei balech harei nisech ein kam beis michush. So Shmuel says, in a case of Kiddushin, if he gives her money or the equivalent, and he says to her, "You're betrothed to me. You're my wife. You're betrothed. That's good." But if she would say, "You're my husband," Hareini Sheikh, I'll be your wife, married to you. That's nothing. If he says to her, "You betrothed to me," that's good. But if she says to him, "I'm your wife," all those phrases, it's no good. Also in divorce. Nasan law, if he gives it to her, you're sent away, you're divorced, you're permitted. All those cases of valid divorce. But if he says to her, Any sheikh, I'm not your husband, any balech, I'm not your husband, any arusech, in campaigns mechush. So it's nothing even to worry about. The Gemara is going to discuss this last clause of Shmuel, and we will, God willing, pick this up at noon today, and also on the Daf Yomi on Shabbos Chodesh Tov. We're going to go upstairs now in the basement. Chodesh Tov to everybody. Shkoyach.